None of us believe in ghosts until we see one. Let's dive into the chilling tale of the Lady in White. It was the summer of 1982 in rural Ohio, when the Wilson family moved into an old creaky farmhouse. Mr. Wilson, a history professor, was enchanted by the home's mysteries, but Mrs. Wilson felt an icy presence from the start. Their kids, Tim and Sarah, heard whispers from neighbor kids about a ghostly lady in white, a widow who roamed the halls searching for her lost children. One night, curiosity got the better of the kids. As midnight struck, they huddled under a blanket, ears straining. And then a rhythmic creaking from the hallway. The door slowly opened to reveal a faint white figure in an old-fashioned gown. Frozen in fear, they watched as she disappeared into the darkness. Despite Mr. Wilson's skepticism, Mrs. Wilson knew. She had felt that same cold chill. Footsteps, doors creaking, and soft sobbing filled their nights. One evening, an icy hand on Mrs. Wilson's shoulder was the final straw. They packed up and fled the next day. That farmhouse still stands abandoned, a silent witness to the unexplained. And locals say, if you listen closely on a quiet night, you can still hear the soft creak of footsteps and the faint sobbing of the lady in white, forever searching for her lost children. The Wilson family had always been close-knit, sharing a bond that was strengthened by their love for history and adventure. Mr. Wilson, with his passion for the past, often regaled his family with tales of ancient civilizations and historical mysteries. Mrs. Wilson, though more pragmatic, enjoyed these stories and encouraged their children to explore and learn. Tim and Sarah, with their youthful curiosity, were always eager to embark on new adventures, especially those that involved uncovering secrets from the past. The decision to move to the farmhouse was driven by Mr. Wilson's desire to live in a place steeped in history. He had come across the property while researching local historical sites and was immediately captivated by its charm and the stories that surrounded it. The farmhouse, with its weathered wood and creaky floors, seemed like the perfect place to create new memories and perhaps even uncover a few hidden secrets. As they settled into their new home, the Wilsons began to notice strange occurrences. At first it was just small things, a door that would creak open on its own, a cold draught that seemed to come from nowhere, and the feeling of being watched. Mrs. Wilson, ever the skeptic, brushed these off as quirks of an old house. But as the days turned into weeks, the occurrences became more frequent and harder to ignore. One day, while exploring the attic, Tim and Sarah stumbled upon an old trunk filled with photographs, letters, and other memorabilia. Among the items was a faded photograph of a woman in a white dress standing in front of the farmhouse. The children were intrigued and brought the photograph to their parents. Mr. Wilson recognized the woman as the previous owner of the house, a widow who had lived there many years ago. He explained that she had lost her children in a tragic accident and was said to have never recovered from the loss. That evening, the family sat around the dining table, discussing the photograph and the history of the house. Mr. Wilson shared what he knew about the widow and her tragic story. The children listened with wide eyes, their imaginations running wild with thoughts of ghosts and haunted houses. Mrs. Wilson, though still skeptical, couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to the strange occurrences they had been experiencing. As the nights grew colder and the strange occurrences continued, the Wilsons began to feel a growing sense of unease. The once charming farmhouse now seemed to be filled with an oppressive presence. The children, who had initially been excited about their new home, were now afraid to be alone, especially at night. Mrs. Wilson, too, found herself growing more anxious, her skepticism giving way to a deep-seated fear. One particularly cold night, as